Hi folks, Debbie Ray here, the gardener wife. I'm in my own kitchen garden today to talk a little more about tomato diseases and problems. I'm actually having a better year than I've had for a while, and that is because I finally took the step to plant fewer tomatoes out here in my 2 tomato beds. So I've spaced the plants farther apart, and that gives them better air circulation. Great way to help slow down fungal diseases. I've interplanted with celery and other things. I always let borage grow here. And I've got a couple other plants that are in the tomato family. Ground cherries, tomatillos, and some peppers. But mostly it's tomato plants here. Now before I talk about those fungal diseases again, I want to show you a couple other common problems. This one here, when you see the black spots showing up under the tomatoes, that's called blossom end rot. And that's not a disease, it's a physiological problem from the plant not being able to absorb enough calcium through its roots. And that's usually, we had a really bad heat, so the plants hunkered down and stopped absorbing as much water and nutrients as they would normally. The rest of the tomato is perfectly fine. You can cut the black spot away and eat the rest of the tomato. I used to wait till they were red so that I'd have a ripe tomato to deal with, but that doesn't help because this just spreads and you have very little red tomato left. So if it starts happening while the tomato is green like this, now's the time to pick it. Let the plant put its energy into ripening other good fruits, and just use what's available here if you want, like a tomatillo or a green tomato. Another problem I've noticed out here is that something got to this tomato plant. See how it's all defoliated? That looks to me like damage caused by a tomato hornworm. And I have looked all over this plant trying to see if I could spot the tomato hornworm, but I did not. It's hard to find. They're about the same color as the stems on the tomato and about the same thickness, so they're hard to find. But I haven't noticed any further damage, so I'm hoping and kind of assuming that a bird came along and got the tomato hornworm for me. Birds do like to sit on these tomato cages a lot, and they cause problems in other parts of my garden, but if they're going for bugs that are destroying my tomato plants, they are welcome. Now, besides spacing the plants farther apart to increase air circulation, to prevent those fungal diseases, it's also important to water from below. And I showed you in the last video how to do that if you don't have a soaker hose. But here you can see in my raised beds, I use soaker hoses. And I have them running under the mulch. These tomato craters act as a mulch for me. Mulch is another good way to prevent those diseases from spreading. So that if you have mulch covering the soil around the plant, then it's less likely that any rain coming down or watering will splash soil with fungal spores onto the plant and spread the disease. So this is the kind of mulch I like. These are reusable, wash them every year, and they help keep the area around the plant free from weeds, somewhat. Okay, so they come up in the middle, and they're good for watering. Good pruning also keeps those diseases from spreading because it increases the circulation. And also you want to remove any leaves that are touching the ground, again, to keep those fungal spores from getting onto the plant from the soil. They're carried in the soil. And I've been doing that, and now it's time to do the next round of pruning away the diseased leaves and branches. So I would remove the entire branch that's diseased and cut it right there by the trunk. Also, since the beginning, besides removing any leaves that were touching the ground, I've been pruning away the suckers. A sucker is any branch like this that starts growing in the crotch of the plant, between the trunk and one of the branches. Now this branch has some diseased leaves on it, so I will be cutting the whole thing right there by the branch. But even if it weren't diseased, you would want to remove any suckers you find. Then after I remove all the diseased branches from one tomato plant, before I move on to the next plant, I sterilize the pruners. And I do that with Lysol. Straight Lysol. I put it in a spray bottle and I mist it onto the clippers. You can also bring a clean rag or a paper towel to wipe them off, or some people just use Lysol wipes. But I do this in between each plant to avoid spreading the disease from plant to plant. When I'm all done pruning the diseased leaves away from the plants, and of course I don't compost those, I spray all the plants with something that will help slow down the spread of the fungal diseases. And this is what I've had the most success with the last several years. I am trying something new this year, but I have to wait and see before I start recommending it. Because I'm growing fewer tomato plants out here in the kitchen garden this year, I'm growing more in containers than I have in the past. My strategy is in these two raised beds to grow mostly paste tomatoes. I've got Amish paste, nice big ones going here, and I have these called Martino's Roma. And then a few of my favorite varieties, Sweet 100s, Big Rainbow, and Brandywine. That's the Brandywine there. Every other variety of tomato that I'm growing, I put in a container. And I spaced my containers farther apart this year. And that's how the tomatoes are doing so far this year. Already harvesting Sweet 100s and a few others. Thanks for watching. I hope your tomatoes grow better now too.